We're going to talk about the church this morning. I usually start the first of the year with kind of a message of, hey, here's where we're going, here's where we've been, here's what we are as a church. And I want to kind of get us going on that by telling you a story about fishing. Anybody go fishing? Anybody like to fish? I don't as much. I'm just going to be honest with you about that. I like it. I just don't like it enough to go and do it without someone taking me. How's that? And so when my son Cooper this past week said, hey, Dad, let's spend some time together, I said, sure, what do you want to do? He said, hey, let's go fishing. I was like, oh. Okay, so the first thing I had to do was go and purchase a fishing rod. That was first on the list. So I went out to Walmart on Friday morning, I grabbed a fishing rod, and I got Cooper in the car around 12:30, 1 o'clock. And if you know anything about fishing, we're already behind the 8 ball right there, aren't we? That is not the time to go catch a fish. So we drive out to Dover Trails, which is down there off of 60 and over there. And there's a pond out there. And we get out to the first fisherman I see. They have bobbers in the water way out in the lake. I realize this is a catfish pond. We don't have any bobbers. It's already, we're not going to be fishing is basically what I'm telling you right now. So we go out there, we get to the side of the lake. I open up the tackle box. Cooper got a tackle box about 2 years ago for his birthday. I'd never really looked inside to see what its contents were. Just figured there, everything would be there. It wasn't. And so, I tied on, like rocks and stuff to the end of our lines. So at least there was some weight there and we could practice casting. So that's what we did. We stood on the edge of this pond, and we practiced casting. But we were in like the worst place to do it. There was a huge wasp nest. Every time he cast, he freaked out. And of course, he asked me where the fish were. Where do the fish hang out? They hang out by where the trees are, and over there on the. So of course, my son, the first thing he catches on our fishing trip is the branch of a tree across the pond. We lose his whole rig trying to yank the thing off the tree limb. I have to redo that whole deal. I don't have a knife with me to cut it. I mean, it's just, listen, if you've been fishing, this is not how you do it. We spent about 45 minutes casting. I wasn't going to be out messed up, so I threw my line in. I caught a very nice log. It was about this long. Reeled that in. It was very special. Finally, we just got tired of it. We realized this wasn't going to really work, and so we meandered back out of the woods and headed back to the car. Now, if you saw us heading away from our fishing, excursion, you might think, oh, there goes some fishermen, but you would be mistaken. We were a couple guys holding some fishing tackle, and we had very poorly, done a very poor job at the whole fishing thing. And I bring this up because I think, unfortunately, this far too often describes churches in America. Here's what I mean. A lot of churches look the part, but they're accomplishing nothing for the kingdom. May that never be said of Bay Life Church. We don't want to just play this game of being fishers of men and make no catches. We don't want to just come in here on Sundays and aimlessly cast. And we certainly, we don't want to just kind of do this until Jesus comes or we leave. That's not the point of church. In fact, if you've been around here any amount of time, you know that we live by a 4-word credo. It's kind of our little slogan. It says, be one, make one. It stems from some scriptures that we hold to very dearly around here. One is the Great Commandment, in which Jesus summed up all of the Old Testament laws by saying, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbors as you love yourselves. We take that very seriously around here. And we want desperately to love our God. In fact, we want to love our God so much that we conform to His patterns and His ways of life. We look more and more like His Son Jesus and less and less like we used to look before we met Him. We call that being one, being a Christ follower. Be one. Don't just fake like you're one. Don't just hold the fishing rod. Be one. But then we couple that with make one. We know that there's not just the Great Commandment in Scripture, there's the Great Commission in Scripture where it says, go and make disciples and baptize them and teach them. Everything that I've taught you, Jesus told His disciples. And we take that very seriously. That's why we plunk roses up on this stage. That's our metric. That's what we want to count. It's great that we have a ton of people filling our room here this morning, but what I'm really concerned about as your pastor is how many people are leaving the darkness of a life without Christ and stepping into a light of a life with Him. That's, it all matters to me, but that matters to me a lot. You with me? So we're here to be Christ followers, and then by the grace of God, to partner with God in making more Christ followers. It's what the church is on earth to do. Sanctification of its saints, of its followers, of the people of faith, to the point where they lead others to salvation. And then the process starts all over again. We're a factory. We're meant to churn out this kind of stuff. So if you're here just kind of playing games, or this is your first step on your resolutions, I'm so great. Glad to have you here. Resolve to be here every week. But know what we're doing. This is what we're about. Now sometimes this can be hard though. Who's with me? This whole process of becoming more like Jesus Christ, is it ever hard for you? It's hard for me. You know, I picture him as a much more slender character. No, anyway, but it's hard. It's hard to conform our character into his character. It's hard to let go of our old ways. It's hard not to sin. We're good at it. It's hard to let that stuff go. It's hard sometimes to share your faith with somebody. Not sometimes. Did I say sometimes? How about almost all the time? I mean, it feels weird for us to start talking about Jesus to other people who don't know him, and a lot of us just don't. I mean, statistics tell us, anything. It tells us that most Christians never talk about their faith with other people. We hide it. Why do we do that? Well, I think it's because we're not really prepared, or we're not really focused. We settle for just casting the rod or looking the part. And this is the year, 2010, where I pray that way of life, that way of living for Jesus in this church dies. And that we all commit to being one and making one together as we move forward in serving God here at this church. It's in these times that I love to go to Scripture and get some encouragement. Paul wrote a letter to Timothy, a second letter. Timothy was this guy who was the pastor of a church in a place called Ephesus. And Timothy, he was pretty overwhelmed in his deal. He just didn't feel like, he had anything to say to his church. He didn't feel like anybody was listening to him. He didn't feel like anybody was following. And so Paul would write these encouragement notes, these prop-up letters, and he'd say, hey, bro, keep going. And he gave them all kinds of encouragements. We're going to look at one this morning in 2 Timothy chapter 4, where it says this. Everybody read it with me on the screens. Full-throated, full voice, first verse of the year. Here we go. But you. Seriously? All right. I thought I set that up pretty good. But are you with me now? All right, let's hear it. But you, keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, and discharge all the duties of your ministry. Paul says to Tim. He says, hey, pal, keep going. This whole walk with Jesus is to be continued. Keep rocking this thing. Now let's break down those phrases real quick. He says, keep your head in all situations. He says, hey, man, you need to be thinking clearly to live this life for Jesus. So you got to get your head straight. He says, then you got to get prepared. You got to be ready to endure the hard things that are inevitably going to come. And then he says, listen, man, don't forget the make one part. Go out there and do the work of an evangelist. Share Jesus with as many people as you can so that they know the truth and it can set them free. And then he says, listen, don't just stop there. Discharge the duties of your ministry. Be involved in service of the church. That's the whole be one thing. Be more and more like Jesus. Adopt his character. Have his heart. Now, this is our mantra for the year. In fact, we're going to learn it. Everybody stand up. Here we go. This might be the first day for some of you. This might be the first time you've ever stood up and moved any part of your body in church. Here we go. But we do this so that we can learn scriptures. My hope is that you'll be able to get to lunch, wherever that is, and you can quiz each other on this verse. See who can do it the best. You ready? It starts out like this. Point your finger at someone and look them right in the eye and say, but you. Let them know you're talking about them. But you. That sounds like a sneeze, doesn't it? But you. But you. Keep your head in all situations. Say it again. But you. Keep your head in all situations. Endure hardship. Now, some of you aren't doing it, and I will come down there. I had a week off. I'm feeling a little spry. You do not want to mess with me today.